Okay, so in this portion, we'll talk about the basic editing and how to export into Photoshop and then save and import your Photoshopped image back into Lightroom. It's really simple, and we're going to use the same gallery as we had from the previous video. I'm going to start at the beginning. We're going to use over here on the right, we're still in that Develop tab from before, and on this image here, we're just going to start with just the basics and getting color correction right and saturation and vibrance and all that good stuff. So this first section here is the basics, and I want to warm this image up. You can see that everything's just a little bit warm and a little bit blue. You can see the cement here is blue, so we're going to warm it up. It was a nice day, but my white balance was just a little too cool, so we don't want it too warm, because then they start looking like they're a little jaundiced, and we want to avoid that. We're just a smidge too bright, especially up in here. And this will be one of those images that we talked about importing a sky into, because the sky in this image is really blown out. I'm going to take my shadows and my black down to give a little bit more pop, especially here on Dad's head. And I don't typically adjust the clarity, because if you get to clarity, you start getting lots of things happening on the skin, and so he's got a lot of blemishes that will pop out, and we don't want to do anything. So I just leave that with the default. If you take it too far down, then you start getting a really hazy, dreamy-like appearance, and I'm not a big fan of that, but some people are. You can play a little bit with contrast. If you go too far, then you get like really white whites and really dark darks, and again, that's not my cup of tea, but you know, add it to your liking because you are the artist. Take down you can see here that the highlight is in the sky. If you're not sure what it's going to do to your image, just play with it. Just push the sliders around to figure out what you like and what looks good. Then you're going to go over to the curved tone down here. And this is just a secondary way or another way to adjust your highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. Really the only thing I do here is just kind of even out my tone. And I'm going to lift up this dark end over here. And put a little bullet point down right at that line right there. And then you can see by doing that, I'm just taking those shadows real deep, but just giving it a more of a creamy feel to the image. And that's the way I like it. That's just my aesthetic. That's the way I like it. So I'm going to leave it just like that. Then you can adjust the saturation, luminance, the hue of the image. If you've got some images that are too orange and you want to make them more yellow, you can make those changes here. That's kind of nice. You never know what a spider's going to do, so just keep playing with it. I like how it made these more orange back in here. Made it more fall-like. It didn't really affect their skin tone too much, which is nice. So we're going to kind of leave that alone. And then when I slide this around, I'm just looking at their skin tones, looking at their clothes, shoes, seeing if it's making any weirdness come about. And it doesn't look like it is, so we're just going to do that. And see, that's got major impact on their clothes. Leave that alone so I get more natural. And that has impact on their clothes. And this is again under the hue. And this affects her bow. It's making it more pink there, or more red here. And I think we want it more red. Does it affect anything else really? Nope. The color on his shirt? Nope. So we'll make it more red just so that her bow matches his shirt and everything looks copacetic. This part here, the detail part, there is another part here, split toning, but I don't use that part. So I'm just going to skip over it for now. If you want more information on that, just let me know. But the detail part is the sharpness of the image, and you can see this is just straight off the camera. This is baby's face, and if I just bump this sharpness up, I start to get a little bit more detail. I could see her eyebrows a little bit better. If I was zoomed in a little bit more, I could start to see her eyelashes even better. I'm going to bump up the detail real quick here too, so I just get a little bit more. But if you're close enough, you'll start to see that it gets a little bit grainy the more sharpening you do. So you're going to come down to this noise reduction and the luminance part right here and slide that up just a little bit, not as far, about halfway as far as you did your sharpening amount. And what that is it just kind of smooths things out, gets rid of that grainy effect, and just kind of gives them more of a natural but smooth finish to the image. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to add my vignetting. This is just darkening around the edges of the image. You can move the midpoint further in if you want. You can make it more square or more round. You can feather it or not. Or you can avoid highlights too. So you'll see that if I have my highlights pulled all the way back here so that it doesn't affect my highlighted sky, it's just going to add the vignetting to the dark areas of my images right here. So it doesn't affect the sky. Now if I pull that back, when I have my vignetting pulled all the way over, and I pull that back over here, you start to see the sky go a little bit gray in the corners. And which is fine if your sky is not blown out. It kind of brings in some of the cloud cover or the detail of the sky, which is nice. But because my sky is, right now, it's currently blown out, I'm just really going to not even touch it. Going to leave it like that at 0 and let it sit until I'm ready with my final product. So I think I have the image now adjusted the way I want it. I think the color looks nice. They look nice. Skin tone looks fair. And I think I'm ready to go ahead and take it on over to my Photoshop to add some flair to it. So on my image down here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go up to Edit In. And if you have Lightroom and Photoshop already installed, it will automatically give the option to go to Photoshop. So Edit In and go to Photoshop. Once you do that, it's going to then pop it up in Photoshop. And my Photoshop was already open with several other images here, so this is the one I just imported into Photoshop. So I just carried it right over from Lightroom, and it popped up in my Photoshop for me right here. And so we're just going to make a quick change to it and save it just so that you can see how to carry it right back over into Lightroom. So this is not going to look good. This is not the change I'm going to do. This is not how I'm going to present it to my client, but we're just going to make a quick change. So I do have actions already installed, and I'm going to use a cinnamon action. And so now we have a really yellow background here and they look really pink. Their skin's kind of, you know, his really blown out in the forehead and the cheeks here, but that's okay. This is just for tutorial purposes so you can kind of see how to do it. So I've added an action. We're going to pretend that this image looks amazing. It looks fantastic. We're good to go. All I have to do from here is hit Control S, or if you're on a Mac, it's Command S. And it starts to save it. Right here, saving 96%. And then it'll turn it into a TIFF file. The original was a CR2 file. It may be a different type of file on a PC, but it does turn it into a TIFF file. And so once it's saved, you can go back over to your Lightroom and it'll be there. It automatically saves it back into your same gallery, back to the same original folder where you imported it from. It's all right there for you. Now once I have it back into Lightroom, I'm just going to make sure that my sharpening, my noise reduction over here is good. I'm going to add just a little bit more noise reduction because that action made it just a little bit grainy. And then I'm going to go down here and go ahead and add my vignetting in and make it just pop right there, make their faces pop a little bit better. And if I need to make, sometimes I come over here and I need to make it like way cooler or way less pink or whatever. I can make changes there. But once I'm done with that, then I changed their 1-star rating to a 5-star rating. And that just kind of for me is a mental note that I'm done with this image and I can move on to the next one. So this is the 5-star rating TIFF file. This is the 1-star rating CR2 original file that I just did basic editing on and then carried over to Photoshop. This is the Photoshop. This is the Lightroom. So I'm done with the Lightroom version because I already have the Photoshop version now. I'm going to give that 0 and get it out of here and move on to the next. So that's just how to take it over to Photoshop, do what you need to do with Photoshop, and bring it back into Lightroom. It's really, really simple, but that shows you how to do that.